Already been through that. Good morning. Today is May 18th, 2023. It's approximately 9:30 a.m. This is the matter of application Z0020-23-C. This is an application for a conditional use permit to construct a new roughly 1,600 square foot public library and to renovate an existing building formerly known as the Concord School into a community center. That will include indoor rec space, community space, and North Clackamas Parks and Rec District offices. There's also a portion of property to be that is proposed for development with additional vehicle parking, a park with outdoor play equipment, and additional green space. My name is Carl Cox. I'm a private attorney contracting with Clackamas County as land use hearings officer. This is a quasi-judicial land use hearing, which means two important things for those participating in this hearing. First, all of the criteria that can be used in reaching a decision have been identified in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the criteria identified in the staff report or other relevant criteria found in the comprehensive plan or other land use regulation that the person believes applies to the decision. Accordingly, please direct your testimony to a relevant approval criterion. Secondly, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Once final, this decision may be appealed to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals. I will further state for the record, I have not received any ex parte contact in this matter, meaning no one contacted me outside of these proceedings to try to persuade me concerning a fact or issue present in this application. Secondly, I have considered issues of bias and conflict of interest and have determined I do not have any bias or conflict of interest in this matter. The county is making a record of this hearing. That record is available through the county. And I will state for people to consider that prior to the end or close of the record, I will make a statement offering to keep it open for additional comments. I'll explain that near the end of the hearing. At this time, I'm going to ask that the county provide an explanation concerning participation in this hearing via the Zoom platform.
Thank you. This public hearing will be conducted virtually using the Zoom platform. Panelists for today's hearing, which include the hearings officer, county staff, and the applicant, have both audio and video capability. Audience members who have joined the meeting will have their mics muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by the county staff moderator. Audience members' video will not be turned on at any time. Today's hearing is being recorded as required by law. The county will make every effort to post the video recording on the county website later today. There is a designated time during the hearing when it will be open for testimony. The hearings officer will make it clear when this is. If you want to provide testimony, you will utilize the raise hand feature. For attendees on PC and iPad, you have a raise hand button on the Zoom bar, either at the top or bottom of your device. When the moderator switches you over to provide testimony, your screen will look different for a little while. Primarily, you will see all participants' cameras, not just the one who's speaking. Staff will call upon you when it is time for you to provide testimony. Be sure to provide your name and mailing address when you begin. Once you have provided your testimony, your mic will be muted and your screen will be returned to normal. If the record is left open at the end of this hearing and you wish to submit additional written testimony, you can email that written testimony to myself, Melissa Lord, at mlord@clackamas.us, mlord@clackamas.us, or you can mail it to Clackamas County Planning and Zoning Division at 150 Beaver Creek Road, Oregon City, 97045. My email address is also provided on the webpage where you found the Zoom link for today's hearing. Testimony must be received by 4 p.m. on the day that the record closes. People who testify and provide their mailing address will receive a copy of the hearings officer's written decision. If you do not wish to testify but would like to receive the decision, you must provide your email or standard mailing address by either email to myself at mlord@clackamas.us or by entering it in the Zoom chat function during the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. And the order of proceedings will be that I will ask the county to begin the hearing by presenting the county staff report, and if the county has a presentation, to present that as well. Then I'll provide, well, the county will have an opportunity to also call upon supporting testimony. Then I will provide a similar opportunity for the applicant, and then I will provide an opportunity for members of the general public to participate in the hearing and provide testimony or submit evidence or written comments that they would like me to consider. Please proceed.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen. I did prepare a PowerPoint presentation for you today. My email address is up on the screen here just for folks who do want to provide any comment. To myself, mlord@clackamas.us. My name is Melissa Lord. I am the planner representing Clackamas County's Planning and Zoning Division today on the matter of file Z0020-23, which is a conditional use permit. The property, the subject property is located on Southeast Concord Road between McLaughlin Boulevard and Oatfield. The property has a few zoning districts, R7, R8.5, open space management, and we'll talk about that in a short while. The property had been developed with a school since the late 1800s, and the current building that's on the site was developed in the 30s, and then an addition was made in the 40s, and it had been used as a school up until 2014. More recently, the applicants had applied for a conditional use permit to establish a government use in a small portion of the vacant building. And that was reviewed as land use file Z0390-22, which was approved of January of this year. That government use was to use, as I mentioned, a very small portion of this building for the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District offices. And for simplicity, I'll refer to the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, likely as the Parks District, moving forward through this presentation. The proposal today that we're looking at is to construct a 15,000 square foot public library to renovate that existing building to expand the Parks District offices from the initial request of 5,000 square feet from that previous conditional use permit to closer to 19,000 square feet. In addition to the Parks District offices, the remaining portion of that building will be used as a community center. The project proposal also includes redevelopment of a public park, as well as various site improvements, which include walkways and landscaping, lighting, as well as redesigning 2 of the parking lots that serve this property. This here is a diagram provided by the applicant, which I think very clearly describes the different zoning districts on the subject property and how they relate to the proposed development on site. So you can see primarily the lot is zoned open space management. That's that pale shade of green that covers most of the property. There's a tiny snippet of this pink red color in the bottom left corner of the site, which is a general commercial zoning designation. And then the darker orange color is a urban low density residential zone R7, and the more pale orange coloring on the top right of the diagram is an R8.5 zoning district. You'll notice here that the 2 parking lots and the public park are located within the OSM district. You'll also notice here towards the center of this diagram, the darker shaded area is the public library, and that library straddles the OSM district and the R7 district. The existing building on site, that was formerly the Concord Elementary School, which will now be the community center and the Parks District office building is located within the R7 and R8.5 zoning districts. Today's application, we're reviewing a conditional use permit, and you'll note that the different uses proposed in all of the zoning districts do have different, the uses are either conditional or primary based upon the use in that specific zone. And so I hope that this table can help clarify which uses are conditional uses and the subject of the review. And so, for example, the library is located straddling between the OSM district and the R7 district. In both of those districts, the library requires the review of a conditional use permit. Government uses, in this case, the Parks District offices in the R7 and R8.5 zone is also a conditional use. And the parking lots are located within the OSM district, and a parking lot that supports indoor recreation facilities and community centers are a conditional use in the OSM zone. And so that's why there's a difference there on the screen between parking as an accessories in the OSM zone for parks and outdoor facilities, but it's a conditional use when it's supporting the community center and indoor rec facility. I just want to do a bit of housekeeping or orienteering for us in terms of the project proposal. It does have many moving parts, and so I just wanted to include this slide to help provide context for the larger picture, the greater application. Today we're reviewing the conditional use application, but there are a couple other land use applications that will be applied for. And so for any folks listening, I just wanted to make this a little bit more clear. The design review application is a required land use application. It's a type 2 land use permit, which means that it's reviewed at the county staff level and will not be reviewed at a public hearing such as this. And that application has been applied for by the applicant. It's currently deemed incomplete, but once they've submitted all the necessary materials for it to be reviewed, the county will send out a public notice, similar to the way that we sent out public notice for this hearing. The design review application is required for institutional uses that are being developed in the R7 and R8.5 zone, and it's required for government-owned parks in the general commercial C3 district, which was that small little piece of red or pink coloring on the previous diagram. There may also be a variance application submitted. It has not yet been submitted, but I understand that it's the applicant's intention to do so. This would also be a type 2 land use permit and would follow the same review procedures as the design review. This is also referenced in one of the staff's recommended conditions of approval, number 9. I put it in here just as an FYI, as designed in this application, the minimum front setback from Spalding Avenue to the proposed library is not being met. And so there are a couple avenues that the applicant could take to resolve that. And so it could comply. And it's my understanding that the variance application is the avenue they intend to choose. So that still hasn't been applied for yet, so we're waiting on that. But generally, this is just the scope of the project as a whole. Going back to our conditional use permit, the subject of today's hearing, I've provided a detailed staff report outlining all of the review criteria that were applicable to this development, but today I just wanted to touch upon a few specific review criteria for this presentation. Section 1001 of the Zoning and Development Ordinance provides a list of all of the applicable sections for institutional uses or institutional development within the 1000 series. Now, not all of these sections are applicable to the subject property. The ones that are applicable to the subject property were reviewed for compliance. In addition, certain sections within the 1000 series were not reviewed during this particular application, but will be reviewed during the subsequent design review application, which is that file Z0023-22. As an example, section 1006 of the zoning and development ordinance speaks to the water supply, sanitary sewer, and surface water management. Oak Lodge Water Services is the water service and the sewer service provider. They're also the surface water management authority for this site. The Oak Lodge Water Services District had determined that the proposed utility demand for this project will be evaluated during the design review land use application. Section 1007 speaks largely to roads and connectivity. The existing right-of-way along the Southeast Concord Road frontage varies in width from anywhere to 60 feet wide to 69 feet wide, and the existing 1/2 right-of-way width along the project site frontage varies as well, anywhere from 30 feet to nearly 40 feet. A standard cross sections per the roadway standards for this type of arterial roadway includes a 70-foot public right-of-way with a 35-foot wide right-of-way, half right-of-way. And staff has recommended a condition of approval to dedicate additional right-of-way in order to provide that minimum 1/2 width of 35 feet where it's not currently being met. There is a mid-block crossing on Southeast Concord Road, and that crossing does not meet the current standards either. And so staff has recommended a condition of approval that would include upgrading this mid-block crossing with new signage, pavement markings, and lighting in order to comply with the standards. The Southeast Spalding Avenue right-of-way also requires a public vehicle turnaround, and this specific requirement for the public improvements is going to be addressed in the design review application for the development as a whole. And it is my understanding that the applicant has been working with our county engineering staff to resolve this issue and make sure that there is the vehicle turnaround being provided within that Spalding right-of-way.
Okay, and I have a question about that. Does that also impact the reference? You had sort of sought comments, I believe, from ODOT, and that came in kind of late. And is that what that refers to?
So that's not what this is referring to. I actually do have a slide on that specifically. So thank you for bringing that up. So I'll circle back to your question momentarily. Road frontage improvements need to meet current roadway standards, which would include further roadway standards drawing would include a minimum 20-foot wide half street that includes the 6-inch curb, 5-foot wide landscape strip with street trees, and then a 7-foot wide sidewalk. Based on the estimated trip generation of this development, improvements along the Concord Road frontage are warranted. And so staff is recommending a condition of approval that along the Concord Road site frontage, the applicant shall remove the existing curb tight sidewalk and replace it with a landscape strip, street trees, and the sidewalk to meet that roadway standard, except for where the curb line exceeds the minimum 20-foot half street width, that curb could remain. And so this is related to your question about ODOT. The county did notify ODOT of the development quite late, and so we've recently reached out to them to receive their comments. Now, the traffic impact analysis that was provided by the applicant identified issues at the Risley Avenue and McLaughlin Boulevard intersection, which is just near to this subject property. And that intersection is in the Oregon Department of Transportation jurisdiction. So hence the need to engage them in this conversation. It's my understanding that earlier this week, county's Transportation Engineering Division met with the ODOT staff to discuss this intersection. Initially, one of the proposed mitigation strategy for this failing intersection was to add striping on Risley Avenue. and that was supposed to resolve this failing intersection that was expected to fail in 2025. However, it sounds as though the traffic impact analysis had assumed single lane approaches on Risley, when in fact Risley Avenue functions with 2-lane approaches, and effectively the projected failure of this intersection won't occur. And so I was expecting to receive comments from ODOT yesterday. I have not yet received them. And so I'm requesting that we leave the record open for a week to allow ODOT to provide those comments in writing. That way we can adjust the findings that were written for this subsection 1007.07, and then any related condition of approval. I believe right now there's a condition of approval, number 11F, that speaks to upgrading the Risley Avenue intersection so that it won't fail. And in the event that ODOT comes and says it won't because of the way it's designed currently, then I'd like to be able to have the chance to update that. So with that, that concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions or provide clarification.
No, you did terrific. I saw that it was sort of an open question around ODOT and that traffic impact analysis, and I didn't understand quite where that was going to go. So thank you for answering that.
Of course, thank you.
Does the county have anyone else who want to provide any further explanation, or wait till there's some specific questions? Or
I think we can just wait till there's specific questions. Ken Kent from Development Engineering is here to support me on traffic and road frontage improvement related questions as well.
Perfect, thank you. Does the applicant have a presentation or comments the applicant wants to make?
Hi,
Good morning.
Jason Varga. I'm the project manager for this project. I have a statement I wanted to read on behalf of the library director, Mitzi Olson, if that's okay.
Sure.
Here, on behalf of Mitzi, our citizens have dreamed of and waited for this new library for a long time. Our current leased library building is on busy McLaughlin Boulevard and lacks adequate parking, making access to the library difficult and dangerous for our patrons. Its limited program facilities and problematic temperature control greatly reduce its appeal and usefulness to the community. The new modern library will be an inclusive, welcoming destination. Its park setting and multi-use capabilities will quickly become the heart of the community. The library will be a resource that enhances individual and community life by offering gathering space and free open access to programs and services that help meet the diverse and evolving educational, recreational, cultural, and informational needs of the citizens of unincorporated Clackamas County. We have had significant community involvement in the design process. The Concord Property and Library Planning Task Force has been meeting since December of 2018. Members of the task force helped to select the design team led by OPSIS and have had significant input on the design. We are excited to make the dream of a new facility a reality and are pleased to present the plans for the new Oak Lodge Library.
Thank you, sir. I believe I recall meeting Ms. Olson at the prior hearing in January.
Yeah, she was double booked, so she couldn't make it.
Certainly. And I will consider the statement you read, and thank you for that. Is that the applicants have anything further to add? Or
I don't think so. Yeah.
I'd like to, I did want to ask the applicant about the ODOT statement. So the record at a minimum will be left open for a week for the to receive that statement. And typically I would leave the record open for an additional week for a responsive statement. So please consider that while I move it over to the public comment statement, and I'll come back to ask about an open record period. Are there members of the general public that would like to provide comments or discussion concerning this application? Please use the raise hand feature, state your name and address for the record.
I have Anata Blackmore.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Anita Blackmar. I live at 14207 Southeast Fair Oaks Avenue in Oak Grove. Granting this permit may seem like business as usual, but it's not. For those of us living in the community around the Concord project, it's actually a momentous step forward. For a long time, we've lived without a place to gather with fellow community members for events and quality time together. Now, with this library and community center complex, we'll have a central heart in the area. It will be a game changer for those of us who live here. It's the most festive thing that could happen ahead of the present time. It's a dream come true, and we're very eager for this project to move ahead. So thank you.
Thank you for your positive support of this application.
It's really easy to be positive about this.
We have another member of the general public.
I have Thelma Hagenmiller.
Oh, yes.
Good morning. My name is Thelma Hagen Miller. I live at 3405 Southeast Westview Avenue, just off of Concord. And my girls went to school at Concord, and I was one of the people that lobbied the school district to not turn this over or sell it to a private entity, but to keep it in public hands. And I'm eagerly awaiting the development of the library and the cultural center and the park, which is going to enhance our community immensely. Thank you.
Thank you. And I remember having an opportunity to hear your words of support in January as well. So
Right.
nice to meet you again, and thank you for your citizenship.
Sure enough, Carl. Thanks.
We have another member of the general public. Okay, so we do have some housekeeping around an open record period. My statement, and I'm going to just read it so that it's clear, hopefully. Does any party or member of the audience want an opportunity to provide additional evidence, arguments, or testimony? Does the applicant wish to waive the period for final written argument? Now, what this means is a little different than what it sounds like, but there is a request to keep the record open. So the record stays open for a minimum of 7 days as requested by the county to submit additional written materials and an exhibit as yet to be named into the record. Typically, then there is an opportunity to respond to such evidence. So I would provide an applicant and members of the public an additional 7-day period to review it and respond to that with their own perhaps counter evidence or counter testimony to that. And then that last statement is referring to the applicant always gets the last word. So an additional 7-day period that is up to them. And they're the only people that submit during that third 7-day period. Is there anyone present that wants that second week period to review the county's additional written materials and evidence and exhibit and respond to that? Yes, Ms. Cleek.
Yeah, we would like to have that opportunity in case the ODOT response doesn't come out back as expected. We would like to have a chance to rebut it or provide additional information or anything like that. So yes.
That absolutely makes sense to me because you haven't even had an opportunity to see what it is.
Right.
So then does the applicant want to keep that last word, that final 7-day period?
So that would be a third week. So it would
Third week, yes.
be 3 weeks out. I don't think that assuming that ODOT's timely with their response, I do not expect that we.
You don't have to make a decision now.
Okay.
So what I would say is this, that it will stay open for 7 days. Then you'll have an opportunity to review that. No one else has requested it. So you could respond, either you could respond saying, I don't have anything to add. And I do want some affirmative statement about whether, you're contesting the proposed condition of approval associated with that. But other than that, you can waive that third period at that time.
Okay,
That makes sense?
yeah,
Just something in writing affirming that, we want to do it, or I'm keeping the record open for it, but you can still waive it, is what I mean.
okay.
Just want
Yeah.
some statement affirmative of that. Have you had an opportunity as the applicant to review the proposed conditions of approval with the county staff report?
Yeah, we wanted to check in. I don't know if this is the appropriate time.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I'm trying to go through them really quick. I know that Melissa alluded to the fact that there's a condition of approval related to the setback on Spalding and the need for a variance. And I can't find
It's
that.
condition of approval number 9.
9. Okay, so we've been working with engineering on trying to come up with a reasonable solution to deal with the Spalding right of way to meet their requirements. And one of the solutions that we currently have set forward, it involves some vacating of the right of way on Spalding Avenue, because it's this weird, I mean, if you look at the map, it's like this weird turnaround bulb that's not really being used as a turnaround bulb. And so we were working on the idea of vacating part of that to make all of the street function the way engineering needs to. So if we did that, then we would no longer need the variance, but the timing of that might be kind of weird because a vacation could take a long time versus a variance. We could submit it right away with our design review. So I don't know if there could be like an either or condition, or how to deal with that fact that we might be able to resolve that through a right-of-way dedication instead of a variance.
Oh, okay.
And maybe I could respond if that would be helpful.
Yes.
The way that I was trying to write that was, that maybe there needs to be a period somewhere in the middle, but the site plan shall be modified to comply with the minimum front yard setback from Spalding Avenue, period. And so that was the way I was trying to convey it, is that the condition is that the setback has to be met. And then if it's not going to be met, then a variance would need to be obtained. And so what I was hoping to convey in that condition, or capture in that condition, was that there's probably a laundry list of ways that you could meet that setback. And if not, then the variance application would have to be obtained if we're not going to meet this setback. So I wasn't trying to write it in a way that required you to apply for a variance, because I think there's a number of ways to meet the setback. And one of them, I agree, would be changing the right-of-way location, moving the building, So
I'm looking at this specific condition of approval. The site plan shall be modified to comply with minimum front yard setback standard with Spalding property line in the R7 zone, unless a setback variance is approved. But you could also, as you're stating, address this through a right-of-way dedication. Yes.
A vacation of the right of way, not a dedication.
Excuse me, it's not a vacation. Okay, it's a right of way, vacation of the right of way. No,
And to add additional confusion, it would be a partial vacation of that right away. It wouldn't be the complete bulb. That's the current discussion.
Vacation of right of way. The county has already asked that the record stay open for 7 days, and then the applicant has 7 days, and then we have a final 7-day period. Perhaps if the county is amenable to revisiting this and proposing an alternative language here that meets this discussion, and the applicant could have an opportunity to review that. Does that seem reasonable?
yeah, I can certainly try to reword that to make it more clear that the setback will need to be met in,
I think it's clear that yours just
in
said
many
setback
different
can be
ways
met.
possible.
Yes, but it could just be that, you know, they can meet it a different way, and I don't want
Sure.
to set up the applicant for having to then file for a modification of this conditions of approval just because they did it a different way. That seems almost identical to me, looking in from this side.
Of course, yeah, I'll work on that.
Okay, is that Ms. Cleek? Is that?
Yeah, that's great. I just want to check with my team. Liz, Josh, do we want to talk about any of the engineering conditions?
It's my understanding, right, Ken, that we'll work through the two conditions along either the frontage at Concord or Spalding as part of our design review, and we feel like our current approach that we've started discussing with you are on the right track, so we don't see like huge deviation from the proposed approach.
Yes, I can confirm that Kenneth Kent engineering section that the way it's been addressed in this, we with the conditional use identified the requirements for certain improvements on the Concord frontage and in the Spalding Avenue cul-de-sac. And then along with that, it identifies that there'll be a design review application, which will work through the details. And there's some of those issues that we would resolve through design review, but we've got the basic need for improvements and requirements in the conditional use, but then design review will further work through that, resolve some of these issues.
Is that satisfactory, Ms. Cleek?
Yeah, I think that's, we were just a little bit worried about the specificity of the conditions of approval in terms of being able to work with the county on, you know, coming up with a solution that's going to work. The Spalding one's very complicated. The drawings we put together to resolve all of these things that Spalding needs to do with one street. And so we just want to make sure that like the specificity of the condition still gives us like flexibility in what we turn in with the design review to work through these and make sure that we can come to a solution that works, that doesn't, you know,
Are you referring
that
to?
there's flexibility. And I think that Ken's answered the question as a yes.
Okay, I thought, if you're referring to condition of approval 10, I thought it was, it's not that specific. It does say current standards, but which, is there a different one that you're?
Well, we were looking more at 11, which calls out the width of the improvements, the half feet, the curb, the sidewalk, and we're going to need to do some things to line up those curbs with the northern property and the southern property. And we're trying to find ways to keep as much of the existing sidewalk that's there so we don't have to spend a bunch of money tearing out a sidewalk to rebuild it. So that was our only concern, is that it's very specific with all of the standards, standard widths and requirements. We just wanted to make sure there that the process is that we will then be turning in engineering drawings to better refine that.
Mr. Kent and Ms. Lord, could we look at a modification to that, just saying, or as determined through, you know, as approved by the county through the design review process, something to that effect?
I think, yeah, I mean, at least initially respond that we can add some flexibility with the intent, because I think we've the condition spells out a certain road width, and then we're providing passenger vehicle turnaround and certain sidewalk improvements. It doesn't specifically say the extent. I mean, we have a cul-de-sac bulb and a right-of-way that extends into the site. It's not specifying exactly how far into that cul-de-sac and what's needed to accommodate the turnaround. So I think we could add some more clarity. I think the initial condition in the heading did reference the fact that there'll be further evaluation in design review, but I think we can, in the open record period, we could clarify.
Oh, I see that. Design review approval shall be obtained for, okay. I think that does, it implies that as long as the design review approves the actual final plan here, that it will meet the standards. That's the intent here.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And I would add, just for a point of clarification, of the recommended conditions of approval, only number 9 speaks to the Spalding Avenue right of way. Condition 10 and 11 both speak to just the Concord Road frontage. There just seems to maybe be some cross-referencing happening here.
You're right.
Well, on 11D talks about Spalding.
Spalding.
No, I
Court.
apologize. Thank you for catching that. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you, is the applicant comfortable with the language? I don't want to end this saying that the applicant, you know, agreed to the conditions, and that's not true.
Josh, are we good with the language?
Yeah, as long as we can work with Ken on it to resolve what
During design review.
during design review. Yeah. And seems like that can happen. He needs to know, like, you know, what the cross slopes of the existing sidewalk are to sign off on it. Things like that. We can provide that.
All right. And I suppose you could always apply for a modification like I referenced. It's just not as much fun. Okay.
Carl, sorry to interrupt. I'm wondering if it would be a big deal to just add to point B under number 11, to just add a clarifying statement after within there that says will be designed as noted below or as approved and by engineering or something along those lines, to just add some latitude there. Because since there are specific dimensions called out that I think may be modified slightly in the Spalding right away, at least. And
I think that it makes sense, but I do think that, you know, the overall statement, as Ms. Lord's referenced here, or it was that it's talking about the design review approval. But if you want, I think adding it there as well. Right. Design review approval, including the following, then it kind of narrows the other subsections if you only put it into one subsection. But you know, potentially, I mean, it's just an argument you can make. I think I'm comfortable that it says the same thing either way. So if you're asking about Ms. Lord changing the language there, I think that's fine. I don't see that it narrows the scope, but it's because of the overall caption above on number 11. It just says, prior to obtaining a certificate of occupancy, design review approval shall be obtained for all of these things, including the following. So
I guess the concern is that design review doesn't say, you know, just saying design review approval is required, doesn't say that
what that's going to end up.
Yeah, that there's flexibility in that design review to get these numerical requirements to work with the site as it's, you know, the existing conditions and the slopes of the sites and all of that sort of thing. So I think if there was an opportunity to say, you know, in condition B that like these standards or similar as approved through design review, something along those lines.
Okay, so the applicant shall design and construct improvements, and then it goes consistent with standard drawing C-140. That's where it starts to get specific.
Mm-hmm.
So you would say and after that C-140, you would say and or as approved through the design review process.
Yeah, that would be, I think that would make us feel more comfortable.
What does the county think about this, Mr. Kent?
I think I agree with that, because through that design review process, if there are particular design features that need to be slightly adjusted. I mean, typically we have a standard cross section, but then we're also tying into existing improvements offsite. That often means that, you know, our cross section is going to be exactly perfect along any frontage. So there will be some variation, and design review gets a little more detailed plans. We would also review, I mean, we have some preliminary drawings that were provided that address some of these conditions, you know, prior to this hearing, that would go through some additional review with staff and design review. So I think I'm fine with adding that language, because it would be, we're saying here's the standard detail, but through design review, it may be, you know, ultimately approved with some variation.
Perfect. And Ms. Manser, does that address your concern as well?
It does. And would you feel comfortable with adding that same to point D on condition 11? And I think that covers the Concord conversation and then the Spalding modifications that we've been working with as well.
I am. If Ms. Lord, are you agreeable to change those conditions of approval to add the additional phrase to those sections?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think we can do that.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Any other concerns that we should address here? Then the record will stay open for that minimum 7-day period. There's an additional 7-day period following that for rebuttal, and the applicant gets a final 7 days for last word. That's 21 total days. As I stated, if prior to the end of that period timeline, the applicant says, no, we don't need to rebut or anything further, we don't need the last word, just let the county know so they can forward that to me, and I'll close the record if that happens. Otherwise, you're welcome to have the final period. The record in any case would close 21 days. That's June, what is that, June 8th?
Yes, June 8th.
At 4 p.m. Okay, any other questions or concerns before I conclude this hearing? Okay,
Okay, thank you.
terrific. It was nice to see you all again, and to hear about the excitement from your the public support that you have for your project and proposal. So I'll end the hearing at this time. Enjoy your day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.